This red table was my kitchen table for a number of years until I made this cherry tabletop to replace it. So the project at hand is to strip this table down and see if we can give it some new life. Step one is to strip off this red paint. So pouring paint stripper, spreading it around with a chip brush. You let it sit for 15 minutes or so, and then you can go to work at it with a plastic scraping tool. This first try was slow going. In some parts it was coming off, in other parts it was being pretty stubborn. The plastic scrapers don't work great for the edge, so for that I'm just using steel wool. And starting round 2, same deal, spreading around the stripper, waiting 15 minutes, and then back with the scraping. So that got us about 90% of the way there, but we did one more, a third application of stripper to really clean it up. So here's what we've got. It's looking pretty good. There is still some red paint buried in the pores of the wood, so I took it out to the garage to do some sanding. This is just mineral spirits I'm using to clean out the pores of the wood, get out whatever stripper is still in there before I start staining. Since the table had been previously painted, I wasn't sure it would take regular stain very well, so instead I'm using a dark gel stain here. The instructions are just to slather it on, preferably cross-grain, try to work it into the pores, let it sit for a few minutes, and then wipe it down. Ultimately, I ended up doing 3 coats. The first recoat was just minutes later, while the first coat was still wet. And that made the table a little bit darker, but not as dark as I was going for. So the instructions actually say you're supposed to wait for the stain to dry before you recoat. So between the second and third, that's what I did. And you'll see that the table got considerably darker with the third application. Here's a close-up after the second coat, and then a close-up after the third. So I did not strip the red paint off the sides of the table. The plan there is just to spray paint it a silver color. So all we need to do is sand the existing coat of paint flat and get it a little roughed up so it will take the next coats of paint well. The spray paint I'm using is a color that matches these legs I got off Amazon pretty well. I'll put a link to those in the description. To mount the legs on the table, I needed to build some support blocks. And for that, I just used some scrap 2x4 that I cut down to height and glued together into L shapes. So I made 4 of those and then glued those to the 4 places I wanted to mount the legs. After the glue was dry, I just went back and added screws in both directions to add some more stability. Then it's just a matter of marking out where I need to pre-drill for the screw holes for the legs and screwing those in. Last step is to put a top coat over the gel stain, and for that I'm using a satin spray-on polyurethane. I ended up putting, I think, about 4 coats. Yeah, and so that's it. Not too bad of a project. I was going to sell this when I was done, but I kind of like how it turned out, so I might try to find a spot for it.